In this video, we're going to go over how to use the LiDAR light tool, what are some of the must-know features, how to navigate around the scene, as well as some other quality of life tips and tricks in order to help you task efficiently and smoothly on BLSS. First, when you open up any task, you're going to see several options here. If you click Start Tasks, that's going to open up the LiDAR Classic view. However, since these are going to be 320 frame tasks, we do recommend that you open it up in LiDAR Lite, where tasks loads much more quickly and more smoothly. Once you click that, you can see the scene loading here. This will vary based off of your internet connection, but again, it should run and load much smoothly compared to the LiDAR Classic tool. So there's several things that are very key to know, and the first thing is you have to save your work currently. That means you have to go over to the side panel here, where all of the tools outside of the regular task are available, and you'll have to click on the Save Task button here. The rest of this UI will look somewhat familiar. There have been some changes. Here on the bottom, you can see some camera views. We'll walk through how to use those in the task. Here you could see the frame selector. Again, you could hold this or also use the shortcuts in order to navigate forwards and backwards in time. The tool panel has moved up to the top of the screen. You can see the brush tool, lasso tool, as well as the cuboid tool that we'll walk through in this video, as well as other settings you could set. Each one of these menus in the top right is collapsible and expandable. For example, if you want to adjust the scene settings, you could click on Scene, and you could find similar settings that you would have found in the Points menu. Here you could affect whether or not the points are colored based off of what they look like in camera view. You could adjust label colors. That means coloring the points based off of the current selected label. Point density, which increases or decreases the amount of points that are shown. Point size, which increases the size of the points. And finally, the max point distance, which increases the size of the points based off of where they're located in relation to where you are in camera view or in your current view. So first, let's just talk about how to navigate around the scene. First, you'll use WASD like normal. But also, just like regular, you could also use Shift to do large movements forwards, backwards, left, and right. Same thing with the arrow keys. Use up and down to pan and tilt the camera, and then also the left and right arrow keys to rotate the camera around. And you could also use Shift while doing these as well. Shift is always going to be the short key for making large movements or rotations. The right mouse button will allow you to navigate around like this. Currently, their engineers are currently working on making this feature run similar to how it did in LiDAR Classic, where it would rotate around the point, but currently you could use it to navigate around the scene like this. You could also hold down Control and use the left mouse button in order to rotate the camera around in a little more controlled manner compared to using the arrow keys alone. Use the mouse scroll wheel to scroll in and out and to zoom in and out. And you could also use T to enter top-down view. This will give you a bird's eye view of the task, and you could also use your mouse scroll wheel as well as the WASD keys to navigate around the scene, and the arrow keys to navigate and rotate the camera around clockwise or counterclockwise. Most of the time when you're annotating objects, it really does help to enter top-down view, so this is one of the major use cases. We'll talk about how to use some of these tools here. So let's just first talk about the LiDAR, the lasso tool. Clicking it here, it's very useful to start from top-down view. You get a really clear view of the object. If I wanted to annotate these trees, for example, I could simply enter top-down view, click around a tree, and the lasso tool here allows me to select a region. And once you're happy with it, you could always close the selection here, and you could press T to exit out of top-down view to double check the current selection you've made. So that's one of the uses for top-down view. Top-down view is also useful for just getting context about the scene as a whole. Sometimes seeing things from very high up makes it a lot easier to annotate and makes getting context much easier as well. Now, I did mention camera view earlier. To enter the camera views, you can click on which camera view you would want to see. Hovering over the camera view will show you which part of the scene that camera is currently pointed at. So here's the Ego vehicle. If I hover over camera 0, you can see it's pointing towards the front of the ego vehicle here in this shaded region. If I were to go to camera 2, you can see it's towards the left of the ego vehicle. Same with camera 3, it's on the right of the ego vehicle. Here I'm just going to click into it, and you can see it opens up the camera into full screen. And you could use either your equals or minus key to move forwards or backwards in time. But I also like to just click and drag in order to make this move almost like a movie, and it makes getting context much easier. So using the camera views is very useful, and it's actually very critical for understanding what the correct label is for objects, and even sometimes what points belong to these objects. Sometimes if you have multiple surfaces that are really close to each other, or different objects that are close to each other, it might be hard from just looking at camera views alone, by looking at LiDAR view alone, but looking at the camera views can be very helpful in building this context and labeling accurately. The other cool feature that we have available in the camera views is the projected points. Here, if you click on it, it will overlay all of the existing points on top of the camera views. When these points are annotated, you will see them labeled according to what they've been labeled as. So for example, if all of this grass was labeled with one label, all of the projected points on top of it will all be labeled similarly. Likewise, if there's a pole or a street sign, those will be labeled separately, and the projected points on top of the camera views will be shown accordingly. To exit out of camera view, you currently have to press the close full screen camera button here in the top right corner, and that will bring you back to the LiDAR view here. Next, let's just talk about how to label a label in LiDAR Light. So for example, if you wanted to use the brush tool, again, I would probably opt to using top-down view. And then what you can do is click on the brush tool or use the shortcut B. You could adjust the size of this brush accordingly, making it larger or smaller. And you could even hide or show points based off of their minimum height or their maximum height. So for example, if I wanted to label the area underneath these trees here if I go to the side view, you can see this tree is covering some sidewalk here. I'm going to turn up the max point distance. If I wanted to label underneath the tree and get the tree out of the way, the easiest way to do this is to, first I'm going to turn on the photo colors, or actually I'm not going to turn on the photo colors, it's a little bit dark. But I'm going to lower down the maximum height, which will cut off the tops of these trees and will let the area underneath the trees be visible. If you wanted to do the opposite of this, you could also do it the other way around. Say, for example, I only wanted to annotate the points above the tree. I could also just raise up the minimum height here. And you can see the points vanish up until it reaches the tops of these trees. So the brush tool in particular, it will just color all of the points that are visible, almost like this is a laser beam. It will go through the whole entire points that are closest to us, as well as reach the points that are furthest from us. So if I click on the vegetation grass label, here I just did Control F to search, and I can bring up the vegetation tree label. You can simply just click and drag to apply the label here. You may need to zoom in based off of your max point distance settings. So here I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more, and then I could color in the points accordingly like this. The one thing to watch out for though when you're doing this is it looks like this tree is annotated correctly from top-down view. However, how the brush tool works is it annotates all of the points that are visible. So here you can see it actually leaked onto the surface, which is very incorrect. A good use case for the brush tool would be if you're trying to clean up some of these ghost atmospheric points and you're having a trouble doing the lasso tool and you have a really small area you want to annotate, you can simply select the ghost atmospheric label and make sure that there's no non-ghost points behind where you're looking at, and can annotate the points like this. Next, we're going to walk through how to use the lasso tool. First, to access the lasso tool, you can click on the second tool here in the top right, or you could use the shortcut L. There's two ways that you could use the lasso tool here. First is to use it sort of like a click and drag around the points. So to do this, you'll just simply click and drag the left mouse button and drag your mouse around the region you wish to annotate. After you release the mouse button, it'll select those points. Once those points are selected, you could apply a label to those. The other use is to draw a region around those points by dropping down vertices. So here, if I click initially, you'll see it creates a point here or a vertex, and I can continue creating this polygon around the selection of points. And when I finally get back to where I first started, I can click on that point to close off the selection and annotate all of those points that I've selected. If, however, you want to remove points from the selection, you could do the same thing, clicking and adding points. But before you close off the polygon, if you hold down the Alt key, it will remove all of those points from the selection that you had made initially. Once you have all of the points you wish to annotate, you could select the label from the label menu here. So here I'm going to select Ghost Atmospheric for these points, press Enter, and it will apply it to all of those points within that selection. The lasso tool is very useful for annotating surfaces, points in the sky, and other objects like rows of trees and other buildings, for example, very easily and very efficiently. Finally, we'll do a brief overview on how to use the cuboid tool. Here I just pressed the button here, or you could also use the shortcut C. And using the cuboid tool, there's several ways you could do this. Again, recommend you go into top-down view to get the best overview of an object. Here I'm going to annotate the points of this building, so I'm going to rotate the camera so the building is parallel or perpendicular with the top of my screen. And what you could do is you can click to place the first point of the cuboid, move your mouse to where you wish the cuboid to stop, and click again. And that's going to create the cuboid for you. It's going to bring up this UI. This means that if you click on this left arrow, it will move it along the left and right axis. If you click on the red arrow, it will move it up and down here on the top and bottom axis. If you wish to move around the cuboid as a whole, you could use this arrow, or sorry, the yellow box here to move it around. Likewise, you could click on the yellow or the white box if you wish to move it around as well. If you want to rotate the cuboid, you can hold down Alt, and that will bring up this blue slider here. Again, you can click and drag, and this will allow you to turn the cuboid clockwise or counterclockwise. If you're happy with the positioning, you could also affect the sizing of the cuboid by holding down Shift and clicking on the different arrows and squares that show up here. Clicking on the red one will expand it from the top and bottom, and clicking on the green one will expand it from the left and right sides. You could also slide it the other way to decrease the size from both the left sides and also from the top and bottom. You could also do this similarly for the white box here. This will increase and decrease the size from the center. And that's similar for both of these here. You could also exit out a top-down view by pressing T, and there's also some other ways that you could affect the size or positioning of a cuboid. Here you could use the blue arrow to move it up and down, and hold down Shift in order to make it larger or smaller. So here I'm going to click on the blue, and I could increase the size of the cuboid. Again, it expands from the center, but it also can decrease to the center as well. If you're happy with the selection, you could go ahead and select a label on the side panel, and you can press the button here and then press Enter to apply the label to the selected points within your cuboid. Like LiDAR Classic, there's several shortcuts that we can use to undo and redo. You could use Control-Z. That will undo the application of points or any changes you've made. Here, it removed the building label from the points within the cuboid. Also, you could do Control-Shift-Z to redo, and here you can see the points are also reapplied with the building label. You could also open up the history panel here, and you can see the buttons for undo and redo And you could also see a change log of the changes you've made in the scene so far. To isolate a label, which means to only show those labels points, you could double click it. So if I only want to see the building's label, I could double click the building here in the labels panel. And now the only points being shown are the points that are annotated as building. Double click it again to hide or to show all the rest of the labels as well. If you hold down Shift while double clicking, that will lock and unlock all of the labels besides that label that you're double clicking on. So one good use case is if you want to label only the building labels, I'll double click it first to show only the building points, then Shift double click it to make sure that only the building points are going to be editable. You can see this here underneath the lock features. Each of the labels is locked except for the building label here. You could unlock all of the labels by clicking on the lock icon here and the unlock icon here, and then also lock all of the labels by clicking at the button next to it, which will lock all of them accordingly. Likewise, there is a show all and a hide all button. Here you could do this as well. For a list of all of the shortcuts that are available, you could enter the shortcut panel here on the bottom right to see all of the shortcuts. And also, you could also access the LiDAR light documentation and changelog in the resource hub that's available at the top of the instructions. One other cool feature that helps out is these numbers here next to these labels. If there's a certain label that you frequently use, or if you're annotating a particular part of the task that has a lot of this one reoccurring label, one cool thing you can do is hold down Shift and press one of your numbers from 1 through 0. Here I'm going to do 7. And what this does is it binds this label to my 7 key. So if I'm on the fence and gate label, for example, and I wish to return to building, I could simply press 7, and that will bring me back to this frequently used label. You could do this for all of your labels accordingly. If, for example, you're only focusing on surfaces, it might make sense to do the drivable region as a shortcut, other ground as a shortcut, curb sidewalk as a shortcut, and vegetation grass as a shortcut. This way you could simply press 1, 2, 3, and 4 to quickly access those labels, especially if those are the only ones you're focusing on at that current time. Finally, there's some other things on the tool that are available for you to use. This button will allow you to run the linters and check if there are any unlabeled points or any other automated errors that the system can catch. You could leave this button to leave feedback about the LiDAR light tool. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns about the tool so far, you could leave feedback here, which will be given directly to the engineers, and they can iterate and fix the tool based off of your feedback. Remember, you should always save your tasks, as we covered in the very beginning of this video, by clicking on the Save button here. If you're done working on the task and you're sure that all the labels are done precisely and you're confident in the work that you've done, you can click on the Submit Task button here as well. It'll give you a prompt, and if you are sure, you can press OK. If you wish to return to the LiDAR Classic view over in Remotasks, you could press this button, but always make sure that you always save your changes before navigating away from this page. If you do not save your changes, then your work will be lost and you will have to redo or won't receive credit for the work that you have lost. Finally, you could see the LiDAR Lite version, the LSS Lite version that you are currently on, and you could use this button again down here to see all of the shortcuts that are available in this task. That's it for now. In the following videos, we're going to cover more workflows that you could follow for annotating specific parts of the task, as well as a good way to approach tasking in BLSS on these longer tasks in general. Hopefully this makes sense. We'll see you in the rest of the course, and good luck.